and welcome to the first ever episode of Whiteboard Wednesday. Now, what these series of short webcasts are for are anybody in the security industry or has an interest in risk management. These are designed for you guys. Now, I'm really conscious of the world that we live in. We haven't got enough time to do anything, so I don't want to put too much burden on your shoulders. What I've done, what these short webcasts are designed to do, is give you information. It's micro learning. What I've done is that I've taken the 20 years of my experience on delivering security and risk management training for various organizations, from the top down to the bottom up, and I boiled that information, condensed it down into short, bite-sized chunks of information that you can take 20 minutes, half an hour. This is going to be a regular occurrence on Wednesdays, and it's going to start at 1 o'clock. But it's designed for you to sit down, have your lunch, put your headphones on, eat your lunch or have your cup of coffee, and digest this information. I'm giving you all this free. You even get CPD points for doing this, and I'll give you details about that later on. And if you've got any questions, please be free to put them in the chat and we'll get back to them. This is also going to be recorded and it will be hosted on our YouTube channel in due course. So put your headphones on and seize the opportunity. Before we jump into these definitions, I want to run something past you. And that is the proposition that risk management is not an exact science. I was given the suggestion by my professor when I first started off my risk management degree. And what he meant by this was that, unlike an exact science like maths or physics, an exact science can reproduce consistent results. But security and risk management, we deal with complex, dynamic, often uncertain scenarios. And how we deal with these scenarios will be down to the personal knowledge, the personal experience of those who are actually managing the situation. There's processes that we can use. Yes. And we're going to talk about these further down the line. But I can guarantee that those that are involved with a security incident will come up with different ways, different solutions to solve the problem. And if it's effective, if they work, then that's fine. It's not a problem. I'm an ex-paratrooper. We jump out of aircraft. But by far the most difficult part, or the far most dangerous part of parachuting, is the actual landing itself. That's when most of the injuries occur. So we spend a great deal of time learning how to land properly, how to absorb the impact, how you roll to the front, you roll to the back, roll to the right and the left, etc. And I can remember what my instructor said to me at Bryce Norton. And he said that any landing that you get up and walk away from is a good landing. And I use that sentiment when it comes to risk management. If it works, if it's effective, then that's fine. It's not a problem. Before we talk about the 13 definitions, why do we have definitions? Well, it's important to have definitions because every discipline has its own language. It's called a lexicon. And what the lexicon does is allow for standardization of terms across the actual discipline. It facilitates better communication. Because what you'll find is that a lot of the words that we're going to use will have similar meanings. It's called a synonym, okay? So what I strongly suggest that you do is that you decide on the term, the definition, that best suits your organization, and then you replicate that through your documentation. If you're going to use different terms and different definitions in separate documents, it's just going to get confusing. As we go through these definitions, these 13 definitions, they come in a particular order, and that order is going to become a lot more clear as we go through the Whiteboard Wednesday series. Okay, so let's jump in. First one is the actual definition of risk management itself, which is the process of identifying, assessing and mitigating risk to minimize the likelihood and impact. That might be a little bit wordy for you at the moment, but don't worry. As we go through, all will become clear. Number 2 is assets. Something of value to the organization, normally divided into 2 categories. Tangible assets, something that you can, something can be quantified, something can be measured. People, buildings, equipment, vehicles, data, tangible assets, as opposed to intangible assets, something that can't be quantified or measured. Things like reputation of the organization, institutional knowledge of staff members, customer loyalty. But at the end of the day, they're all important to the organization. Threat, an event or action that can harm an organization's assets or operations. They often involve a hostile, malicious intent. Somebody wants to do you harm. It can be generally divided into generic and specific threats. Generic is a generalized threat that applies across an organization or industries or geographical area. Terrorism is an example of a generic threat, as opposed to a specific threat which is targeted against an organization due to who they are, where they are, what they do, and who they interact with. Now, it's important at this stage to acknowledge the fact that we identify a threat and we calculate the risk, and that will become more evident later on. Vulnerability is number 4, the exposure of an asset to a threat due to lack of mitigation. One of the recommendations of the inquiry into the Manchester Arena bombing that will no doubt become part of Martin's Law when it finally goes through Parliament involves organisations being able to conduct vulnerability assessment. And I'll be spending a great deal of time on this, showing you how to do vulnerability assessments. Number 5 is likelihood, probability of a threat exploiting an asset's vulnerabilities. Probably the most challenging part of the risk assessment process, as it involves trying to look into the future. However, there are ways of doing this. Likelihood is usually articulated as a number or a percentage. Number 6 is impact, extent of harm inflicted when a threat is realized. Harm against one or more of the organizational assets. Impact and likelihood are critical elements of the risk assessment that we'll see in a little while. Impact, in a similar fashion to likelihood, can be articulated with a numerical descriptor or a financial cost. Number 7, risk. Combination of both likelihood and impact. Remember that we calculate the risk, and we calculate the risk by the formula likelihood times impact equals risk. Risk is normally shown as with descriptors of low, medium, high, etc., or a numerical value. Remember, identify your threat and calculate the risk. Number 8 is the risk assessment, the most important document that we have within the study of risk management. And the risk assessment is the process of identifying, analysing and evaluating risks to guide effective mitigation. Falling under the risk assessments are several critical components. Number 9, the risk matrix, a tool used to evaluate risk by comparing likelihood and impact to prioritise actions. This tool, the risk matrix, uses both qualitative and quantitative methodologies and gives you a rating for the actual risk that you are looking at. Number 10, the intermediate risk value. Calculation of risk considering the existing mitigation strategies that are in place right now. It's normally the first half of the risk assessment. The information we get on the mitigation strategies normally will come from a security survey. And again, we'll be looking at security surveys later on in a lot more depth. Residual risk is the level of risk that remains after the implementation of further mitigation strategies, the risk that's left over. And number 12, following on, risk acceptance, the decision to acknowledge and tolerate a calculated level of risk that has been mitigated, sometimes called risk appetite or risk tolerance. And finally, mitigation, process of implementing strategies to reduce the likelihood and impact. Physical measures that you put in place to protect an asset from the threat. The more measures that you have in place, the less vulnerable the asset is, the lower the risk calculation. Now, this list is not exhaustive, and as we go through Whiteboard Wednesdays, there will be a lot more definitions and we'll tackle them as we go along. But if you understand these important definitions, what they are, where they fit within the security risk management process, you will not have a problem when we come to the more complicated parts later on. These are the critical parts of risk management. However, if you understand these 13 points and know what part they play and where they come in to the security risk management process, then you are well on your way to understanding security risk management. Well, I hope you found that useful. Whiteboard Wednesday is designed to be built on, and we'll go through different topics as the weeks commence. But as I mentioned to you, this is my knowledge being condensed for you. The CPD points, you get one CPD point per episode. If you want to claim your certificate, what I need you to do, you need to send me an email, and we'll be giving you that email for you to actually request a certificate. Or you can go on to the risk consultancy website and a little box will pop up and you can fill in your details there. You will then be signing up for the newsletter. We're going to be back on the 19th, on Wednesday the 19th at 1 o'clock this time. 1 o'clock for lunch. Yeah, so you can have your cup of coffee and your lunch while you're watching us. The banner is coming round the bottom there. So theriskconsultancy.com is the website and you can sign up for the newsletter. We're also posting this to YouTube and you can use that then as a library. You know, it's all good stuff.
I just want to ask,
yes, of course.
Because you've given us a little breakdown at the beginning, are you going to go into more depth over the next few, the Whiteboard Wednesday?
Absolutely. I mean, this was just a brief overview of the the major definitions within the industry. All those definitions, I'm going to peel back the onion layer on the skin, and I'm going to really drill down into those definitions so you understand it fully, and so you will totally understand what risk management is about as we go through the series. But I'm going to be adding different things as well. I want to give you as much knowledge as possible for you to be able to do your job and to keep people and the assets safe. The CPD points off of the Security Institute. If you're not a member of the Security Institute, I'll put the link down for you. I consider it really good professional organization. I get a lot out of it. Really enjoy being a member. Yeah, it's very beneficial. That's it. But next, we're going to be back on the 19th. This was a soft launch, 1 o'clock on the 19th. Please leave us your comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time.